Hi, parents, and welcome. I am so psyched today because I have a super cool guest. I've followed him for years now, and he is absolutely the go-to guy for what we're going to talk about today. And what we're going to talk about is executive function. And that's really, he's going to talk about the key to success for your teenager. So I usually don't read bios, but I'm going to read this bio because I think it really goes to the heart of what you do. This is Seth Perler, and he is an executive function ADHD 2E coach, and he helps struggling outside of the box. I love that. Neurodiverse learners turn it around in a baffling system so they can launch a successful future. And of course, parents, we all want our kids to launch successfully. And Seth, y'all have got to go to his website. He has the most incredible website. It is deep and wide. And please read Seth's about his story, because he has an incredible story. It's very inspirational, and it really speaks to his heart and his passion for helping people. So please make sure, and all the links will be there for you to contact Seth. So Seth, you described yourself when I read your website as an honest, practical, and unconventional, and you are a renegade teacher. I love that. You are a kindred spirit, because I think that as people with servants' hearts like you and I have, we just want to do whatever it takes to help people. So Seth Perler, welcome today.
Thanks, Renee. I'm excited to share with people today.
Yeah, you're just absolutely amazing. And we have the 1-2 punch on this summit because we have your dear friend, Deborah Reber.
Oh, one of my favorites.
And so y'all are really going to dovetail together. So I want parents to be sure and watch her video as well on this summit. So executive function, there may be a lot of parents out there that don't know exactly what that is. So will you explain that to us?
Sure. Well, first of all, hi, parents. And Renee, thank you for having a servant's heart and putting this together for people, because, people make a choice to do something to help, and you just made a choice. So I really respect you for doing this for people to give. Yeah. So what is executive function? So hi, parents. I hope you're having a good day today. Executive function is essentially how you or your friends or anybody you know or your child uses essentially the front third of their brain, this front part of the brain, to help them execute important tasks. Now, dogs have executive function, cats have executive function, humans have executive function. We are all trying to accomplish goals or do tasks that help us to have a good quality of life. Obviously, it's going to be very different for something that's a different species than human, but we're looking for food, we're having shelter. But for humans, as an adult, you have certain responsibilities that you have to execute upon. And your child has certain things that they need to get done. Now, execution, getting things done for somebody with strong executive function, seems relatively easy. And generally speaking, I break it into 2 categories, Renee. So parents, it's basically when you're thinking about your child, it's usually schoolwork and responsibilities. Okay. I like to make things as simple as possible. Responsibilities fits chores, it fits college applications, job applications, whatever. And schoolwork is also a responsibility, but that's writing papers, keeping a plan, organizing backpack. So we have to execute on these things. Well, for some people, it's very hard for them to execute, to get things done. And execution involves anything necessary to get things done. We'll go into that in a little bit in a little more detail. But for now, you can imagine if your child has to execute on doing a homework assignment, they have to know what the assignment is. They have to have used a planner to record the details of the assignment accurately. They have to be able to ask for help if they don't know what to do. They have to know how to get started, where to start, how to make a plan, how to estimate how much time they need. They have to finish. They have to turn it in. They have to be able to focus, pay attention, prioritize, get rid of distractions. All of those things that I just rambled are parts of
Wow.
execution so kids who struggle with executive function, it has to do with the development of their brain. They're struggling to execute on, they're struggling to do aspects of execution. Now, I know what some of you parents are thinking. Okay, Seth, yeah, but I've seen them do it before. I know they can do it, or they do it just fine when it comes to something that's important to them. And we'll get into that stuff later. But for now, I want you to put that aside and imagine for the duration of this talk that what if there are legitimate struggles that has to do with the development of the brain, even though they can do it sometimes. And that's what I want you to have an open mind to today, because if that premise is correct, then we can do things differently to serve our kids.
So when you talk about the word development, how it's developed in the part of the brain, is there a way to develop that development, so to speak? I mean, is there a way to move that forward? Can that be developed?
So I run a summit called TFOS, the Executive Function Online Summit for Parents, where I interview a bunch of experts just about executive function. And I've interviewed probably about 50 people on at least, even in time anyway, and I YouTube about it and all this stuff. So I think that people would answer that question very differently. And I'm just going to give you my answer. My answer is yes, and there are two ways to look at that.
Okay.
One way is the prefrontal cortex of the brain develops from the back forward. So your child's brain continues to develop. The front part of the brain is the last part of the brain to develop, and it continues to grow, if you will, for lack of a better word, until your child is about 25 or 30 years old. So if your child is struggling with execution, yes, there's, excuse me, plenty of hope, because it will continue to develop. And when I say develop, what I mean is that our brain has all of these cells called neurons. These neurons connect together when we learn things. So I like to play guitar. So right now I'm working on a Tears for Fears song. I don't know if you remember the band Tears for Fears.
Yes, I do. Absolutely.
And I just started learning that song the other day. I've never played it before. I just started. And so I've played it, so far maybe 10, 20 times or whatever, but each time I'm not just learning the song, but my brain is making connections that were not there that are now there. So these neurons, these axons and dendrites, these ways that brain cells connect together, they're forming new connections so that it becomes memorized or integrated. And I'm better at that. So the same thing with your child, as it's developing, new neurons are being made and or connecting. And as we practice execution in a more structured way, in other words, as somebody compassionately, patiently, and empathetically and skillfully coaches your child, whether they're a coach or a sibling or a tutor, it doesn't really matter. When somebody coaches or teaches your child directly, there's something called direct instruction and indirect instruction. When they're directly teaching your child about execution, and your child is consciously and mindfully putting these things into practice, what I call implementation in my process. I talk about 3 steps, basically: foundations, implementation, and maintenance. But when they're implementing and they're practicing these new skills of, let's say, organizing their backpack on a weekly basis,
right?
Maybe they've never done before and it's just always been a mess, or using a planner, which is a lot of little skills, or whatever. As they're doing that, the neurons are starting to say, hey, what's up? Let's work together. And then you start to get a strong connection, and those skills, executive function skills, as they're being practiced, get stronger. So quite literally, on a literal neural level, we can help accelerate how soon this happens. The other thing is on a systems level, or an accommodations level, or a modifications level, or a personalizing or tailoring or customizing level. And what I mean by this is, for example, this is the sheet that I use this is like a version of how I teach kids to plan.
Ah,
It may seem
yeah.
like a simple little silly piece of paper, but like the first question, well, the second question is, what's your number one priority? These kids are not good at prioritizing. So just asking the question, giving them something that says, hey, what's up? It's Wednesday night, let's say. Let's work on what do you have to do tonight? What's your number one priority? This is my daily plan. So the kids also have a planner, but I teach them to make a daily plan, which you probably do. I do. You know, we have our ways of making a daily plan, but you and I both think, what's my number one priority? Before you and I started today, Renee, I told you that my number one priority was I just finished my summit recently, was getting my all access pass backend page completely finished, because I told my people I would get it to them today. So that's my number one most important thing. Well, if I didn't contemplate that question, I might be, you know, going for a hike, working on the lawn, playing guitar, playing video games, whatever. But so anyhow, we not only is the brain making these connections, but we are giving them customized, personalized, tailored systems for how to plan, how to organize, how to manage time, how to advocate for yourself to your teachers, how to ask for help, how to receive help from your parents, how to regulate emotions, how to problem solve, how to make better decisions. If your child makes decisions that are questionable, executive function is all about decision making, and all these things are related. But either way, so yes, the brain develops, but the two ways are that yes, the brain is developing, and yes, we're also giving them concrete systems. Now I want to mention one more thing about that. With kids who have strong executive function naturally, if you think the nature versus nurture thing, which it's not versus nurture, but if you think about the nature nurture thing, kids who tend to have strong executive function, they are systems thinkers. It looks like they're picking it up through osmosis, or it looks like they're trying harder and they're not being lazy and they're more motivated and they're making a decision, but that's not it. It comes more naturally to them, but they've been practicing these skills more consciously for way longer. So when the teacher says, hey, everybody, every time there's homework, I write it on the board right here, and it's in this color, and I want you to write that and put it in your planner, and these kids hear that. The kids that I work with, that's in one ear and out the other. And the practice over a period of years for kids with strong executive function, they've really been, it's like a workout. It's like, and it's like a guitar workout or a sport that you do, you know, use it or lose it type thing. They've been practicing and doing that workout of using a planner or getting organized or asking for help over and over and over and over. But with the kids who struggle with this stuff, we're really starting from ground zero. So I want to make real clear that it's not a matter of that your child is not motivated or is lazy or doesn't try hard enough or don't care or any of that stuff. That these are legitimate struggles.
And I appreciate that, because what you have done here, which is what is very important to me in my life coaching practice, is that you have given not only just the tangible information, but to me, more importantly, hope to the parents. Because I'm sure in your practice and like in mine, parents come to us and they are just pulling out their hair. They're frazzled. They don't know what to do. They want their son or daughter to be successful and productive and happy, and they don't know exactly what's going on. And so with what you're explaining here, we're telling the parents there are things that absolutely can be done. So to kind of really to ease their minds, because I know I was that parent when my daughter was a teen, and she's very bright, and she wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until college. And that was an interesting situation there. It was very difficult for her. And so if we would have known the things that you were talking about with executive function, we would have been able to act upon that. And I would also like to say that it's not too late. You know, it may seem a little like this is triage time in the high school years, but maybe you could speak to that. It's not too late to start with that. It may take longer, like you said, years of practice and multiple skills and using all the tools and all that. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit about that. it's okay if you start now and they're in the 11th grade or
You
our
better
freshman
start
college.
now. As
Yeah,
soon as you're aware of it, you better start. Now, most people come to me when their kids in middle, high school, or college. Sometimes they'll come to me with a fourth grader or third grader or something,
okay.
but that's very uncommon. Although I do have a lot of people who follow my blog who have younger kids and ask me to make more resources. I just only have so much bandwidth. But the reason I don't, and the reason that I focus on the older kids is because that's when people naturally come to me, because people don't see the need earlier. Because a lot of times when a kid's in third grade, the teachers are like, oh, they'll figure it out. And I'm not blaming teachers. I mean, some
Right,
teachers see the red
right.
flags, but a lot of times they're like, no, or the parents themselves just, they don't, the flags aren't red enough. And it just, and the grades are fine. All of a sudden they go to middle school, the training wheels come off, but they haven't learned to ride the bike and they're scraping themselves up all the time. And then parents go, oh my gosh, my kid all of a sudden has 3 Fs. They've always gotten A's and B's. What is happening?
Yes, yes.
So that's why, but yeah, you better start as soon as possible. And why is that? Because the later somebody starts, the more potential there are for high risk situations, big consequences, real life consequences, where these kids can really begin to limit opportunities and possibilities for themselves for having what you said, a happy, successful, productive future. They can really be making bad decisions, and it can snowball and get bad very fast once they get into upper high school and college.
Absolutely. And
Or post high school.
That's kind of a good segue into that we have other experts on this summit that talk about mental health. And when you have the poor executive function skills, and maybe you're not getting the support logistically from who you need, or even the emotional, and you talk about being patient, and that from the parents, quite honestly, sometimes, because they don't understand, they think their teen is just lazy or that's just a teenager, then that can lead into depression, anxiety. And so we have speakers that are joining us on this that are going to be talking to that, and also holistically about how hormones enter into this, and different other things. So you have key aspects of executive function.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to go into that for us?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you parents just a little bit about the aspects. Now, like I said, I just did my summit where I'm speaking to all these different experts, and all of these experts say, this is the way, this is what executive function is, this is how to help. And they all have a different model. But what's ironic is they're all saying the same thing in different ways. So, and I know like Renee has 3 pillars, and those are how she communicates to a family. We're starting what in Seth's world, I talk about when I'm talking to experts. I say, we're starting at point A, we want to get to point B where we've turned a corner. It's not perfect, but point A, the parent's really concerned. Point B, they can go, oh, my kid's gonna be okay. It's not perfect, but we've got these things in place. And so that is a tremendous journey. And Renee has 3 pillars to get to that journey, and all these people have all these different ones. So some experts will say there are 3 aspects to executive function. There's 1 main one, there's 5, there's 8, whatever. And I have a lot, but what I'm concerned with is what I call spoke theory. So you have a bicycle wheel with all these different spokes, and they're all connected to that hub, and they help to support the wheel. And you can tune spokes, meaning that you can change the tension on them to make the wheel spin more accurately. So if you're, in the Tour de France riding, you better have those things perfect. Most people are not at that level. So we just need good enough executive function. But our kids might have missing spokes, bent spokes. What's that?
A flat tire.
Or a flat tire. So these aspects would represent like all these different spokes. So, and you're going to notice as I describe this, parents, that there's a lot of overlap. So like before, when I used the word prioritizing the important thing in the moment also implies resisting a distraction in the moment. So meaning that those things do go hand in hand. So anyhow, First one I'm going to talk about is planning. Number one is planning. So executive function, the front part of the brain, helps us to plan. So if I got to run errands today, if I got to work on the lawn, if I'm going to plan my day, if I want to do what Renee's doing, launch a summit, if I want to write a book, if I got to go to work, planning helps us plan goals. So these kids who struggle with executive function struggle with planning, and it's not just using the planner and the agenda and the calendar. It's long-term planning, short-term planning, daily planning. There's a lot of skills involved in planning. But obviously, if your child doesn't have the skill sets to realistically, listen to that word, realistically plan so that they can, listen to this word, reliably execute their plan to accomplish their goal. If they can't plan, they're not going to be able to accomplish the things that are important to them. They may be able to plan when it comes to things that are more instant gratification, but when it comes to things that are not as engaging, are they able to really plan for that realistically? So these are skills to build. Again, number two is time management. Obviously, time management and planning go hand in hand. Number three is organization. I say you organize three things. One, you organize stuff. Two, just generally in my work, what I hear about organization is one is organizing stuff, two is organizing your writing, and three is organizing your thoughts. So stuff would be like your locker, your backpack, your bedroom, you got your school supplies. So organizing stuff has to do with that. These kids often are disorganized when it comes to stuff, but there's also organizing their writing. These kids are often the kids that vomit out a bunch of words into a paper, and then it's a mess of a paper, and it's very hard for them to edit because they didn't plan. That goes back to planning, what we were talking about. And then organizing their thoughts. These kids tend to be way more global, creative, random thinkers,
Yes.
Not linear, step-by-step, structured left brain thinkers, more right brain. So next one is prioritizing, which I think I've spoken enough about, but what are we going to prioritize? The thing that is going to feel good in the moment, or the thing that's going to plant a seed for our long-term well-being? So for example, doing let's say a job application, let's say your kid's like, oh, I want a job this summer. I want to work at so-and-so. That'd be so cool. You're like, cool, go get a job, go apply. Well, just for them to do the application process, which is not the fun part of the job, they might not ever get the job because they can't prioritize doing the application. So that's another one. Next one is decision making. So decision making, obviously, these kids with who struggle with executive function often make decisions that are more risky. Risks can be really good. You know, you and I doing a summit, or you, the parent watching, you've had many risks where you've taken risks that have turned out to be really good, or they've been complete flops, but you've learned so much from them. But then there's risks that are really unhealthy, scary, maybe illegal. There are risks that people shouldn't be taking for their own well-being. So decision making is number 5. Number 6 is inhibition. Inhibition means holding back. So let's say that I'm driving and somebody cuts me off and I want to flip them off and bang the back of their car or something like that and yell at them and like that. You know, we control our impulses, but impulsivity, you know, your child, this is often the kid who blurts out in class, or but impulsivity has to do with all types of ways that we hold back, and we hold back thoughts, we hold back our words, and we also hold back our emotions. Now, there are unhealthy ways, obviously, to hold back emotions. If somebody just passed away in your life and you don't grieve properly and you avoid it and whatever, you know, and you check out or have ways to, you know, where you're not in a mentally healthy way working with a problem, like that's not good. But there are times to hold back an emotion, when, anyhow, the point is that there's healthy ways to inhibit. And inhibiting, also, what I mentioned before, means inhibiting distractions. Inhibit means holding back from allowing, these kids are very distractible a lot of times. So inhibiting means our ability to focus on the thing. Focusing also has to do with inhibiting. You can't focus with, you and I, my phone is turned off right now. I don't know about you, Renee, but we're
on the other side of the room.
we're doing this right now. So I am inhibiting distractions. I don't want to be disturbed by the dog, by somebody knocking on the door, by the phone. Now, the other the other side of inhibition is impulsivity. So if we are impulsive, we are not inhibiting.
Right.
So so that's another one. So now I put those two together, inhibition and impulsivity. But like I said, they all go hand in hand. But
Okay.
number 7 is concentration, attention, and focus, which I consider the same thing. So I use those words interchangeably. My kid can't concentrate. They're not paying attention. They're not focused, or they are focused. They are concentrating. They are paying attention. And then the opposite of those three things is distractibility. So I consider number 8 distractibility. So if we're distracted, we can't focus, concentrate, pay attention. Then this one may not seem like an aspect of executive function, but it certainly is, as far as I'm concerned. That is attention to detail. So kids with strong executive function often notice the important details. Kids who struggle with executive function often miss important details. For example, they may actually turn in their homework, but they forgot to put their name on it, and then they got a 0 on it. So that detail is very important. Or these might be the kids, particularly in middle school. They could do mental math really well for years. All of a sudden, the math is hard, so hard that they can't do it in their head anymore. Yet they will not accept the reality of that, so they don't want to show their work. So they do these problems, and they make one little error, and they didn't have the patience to check their work or to take their time to show their work, and they make one little error, and the whole thing is wrong. So that's just one example of details. This is also the kid where you say, hey, we're going to leave in 5 minutes. Can you grab A, B, and C, and I'll meet you in the car? And they forget all 3 of them, or they bring one of them, or they're like, what was that? Now that also has to do with details with number 10, though, which is working memory. Working memory has to do with how the brain is able to track things in a moment. So right now I'm trying to stay on track with you, where my working memory has to say that I am talking about aspects of executive function. I have to stay on track with my working memory. I don't have that good of a working memory, so I have notes in front of me. If you notice my eyes moving back and forth, it's because I'm supporting my working memory with an accommodation that works for me, so that but working memory, like if I was to say to you, hey, jot down the you ever do this, Renee, when you're on the phone and somebody says, hey, yeah, give me a call. My number is 303-842-6598. And you're like, 303-842-6598. Like I do sometimes a song or something, and then I write it down.
Yeah.
But the working memory is, how do we keep those in mind? Or if I say, what's 163 plus 52? Well, some people watching right now are going to be like, what was that, Seth? You said it too fast. So like, and some of you are like enjoying doing the math problem right now. So working memory has to do with how we juggle little things in the moment. One big problem with working memory is in the moment. A lot of times our students think, like their teachers will say, this is the assignment, and our students will think, oh, well, I can remember that, because their working memory is retaining it in the moment. But 5 minutes later or that evening, it is gone, because it was only in working memory. It wasn't in long-term memory. Now I said 10 things, but I have more than 10. So number 11 is transitioning or pivoting. So this is transitioning out of the door in the morning to get to school, transitioning from class to class, pivoting from video games to the dinner table. Transitioning and pivoting have to do with how can the front part of the brain, the executive function, help us to transition to a new activity. Kids who struggle with executive function often struggle with transitions.
Yes.
They're forgetful, they're late, all those sorts of things. I go to a men's group on Monday nights, and this past Sunday I went over to my friend's house where it's held, and I knock on his door, and I'm like, hey, what's up? He's like, yeah, what's going on? I'm like, where is everybody? And it was Sunday, not Monday. So we all do stuff like that. Yeah. That's a transitioning type of thing, I guess, maybe. But anyhow, so the next one is you parents are gonna really all relate to this one. Well, all of you parents whose kids struggle with executive function. Self-starting, task initiation, getting started, getting momentum, getting the train going. Okay. If we don't start, we call it procrastination. We call it not dedicated. We call it unmotivated. We have different words when people are not self-starting. The front part of the brain helps us start. Often our kids don't know where to start, or they're overwhelmed because it just feels like a giant task and they don't even want to start. But self-starting is part of executive function. Learning these skills, again, this is not because someone's being lazy. Learning these skills of self-starting are very important.
Right.
Now, it may seem like you adults, some of you watching may be like, well, I just choose to start, Seth. You know, I just make a decision and do it. Well, no, you don't. You have built skills to help you pivot and transition to start the things that are important to you. You've got it down to a science. That's great, but you've worked on it. You've polished that sword for a long time. So it doesn't just come. These are skills you've built. Really think through how you start something. You do have a formula or multiple formulas for different things that you start. So I wanted to talk about self-starting, number 12. Number 13 goes with self-starting, and that is follow through, or also called task persistence. Follow through. So the kid starts, but they don't follow through. And then you have task completion, finishing, getting it turned in with your name on it, or whatever the thing is. You know, a lot of these kids are good at doing 80 or 90% of the thing and then don't finish it and don't turn it in at all. The next one, number 14, is self-awareness. Now, I think of self-awareness as the same as metacognition, introspection, self-reflection, self-awareness, self-consciousness, or not in the negative way, in the positive way of being conscious of what you are doing. So that is part of executive function. Kids with strong executive function are very self-aware. They do something. They say, how did that work for me? And their brain records it. They say, it didn't work very well. I'm going to do this differently next time. Or that worked really well. I'm going to do more of the same next time and polish it up a little bit. These kids a lot of times struggle with self-reflection. Maybe they're, and I know, again, some of you are thinking, well, when it comes to their video games, they're self-reflective, you know, but when it comes to the non-preferred activities that they have to execute on for planting seeds for their future, they often are not doing that. And then I think what I will do is, well, I'm going to wrap up with two more. The next one is advocacy. This may not seem like, this one is probably the least executive function one, but it's something that all my kids who struggle with executive function have to learn how to do, to ask for help, to go to the teacher, to be like, hey, teacher, what was the homework tonight? I already told you. I don't really care. I don't know. Sorry. Don't, you know, I don't catch all the details. Will you please work with me here and tell me what the homework is? You know, for a kid to be able to advocate. Now, obviously that's not every situation, but a lot of times those sorts of things, these kids might really have had some experiences like that where they just don't even want to ask, but it is a skill set to learn how to advocate and say, I need some help. And then the last one is emotional regulation. So we have ways of regulating emotion, our nervous system. And I'm not going to go into this a lot, Renee, except to tell parents this. We are not very aware or in touch with what's going on in our bodies, in the nervous system, in our culture, or in many cultures around the world. We are in a very distracted world, a very noisy, staticky world where we can really avoid noticing what's going on. What's the problem with that, parents? The problem is this, is when we have a thought or a narrative or a story, and we've made mountains out of molehills or distorted the story because it's uncomfortable and we want to believe our stories that we are comfortable in, even if they're dysfunctional and maladaptive. It's more comfortable, at least in the moment, to retain that story. And the nervous system has a response where we are physically uncomfortable and we want to resolve that. We don't want to feel that. So what we do is we distract in a million ways, and we don't address the fact that we're having a sensation and a sense of discomfort, and we forget about that, just try to feel better, get over it, move on, when we haven't resolved truthfully what's going on. So the next one is emotional regulation. How do we regulate, work with emotions? What you said before, mental health. How do we develop skills around that? The prefrontal cortex has a lot to do with how we regulate emotion. So those are, I think that was 15 aspects, but I probably mentioned like 20.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, you can say there are 3, you can say there are 5, 8, I don't care, but I think that that description, parents, will give you a very clear understanding of what is going on with executive function. All of those spokes that I just mentioned, remember, all of those spokes are under the umbrella of things that help us execute. We need all of those things to help us execute important things.
Thank you. That is a beautifully comprehensive list, and I took lots of notes, and so I'm excited. I'm going to watch this again and take more notes. But I wanted to say that with this also, that your team may or may not have all of these, that it's a spectrum thing. They may have, like, they're like a 0 to 10, they might be a 2 in one of these areas and an 8. So again, it's that fine tuning. I call it tweaking, because they're not broken. And as coaches, we're not here to fix them. We're just here to tweak that so they can be the best that they can be, right? And so with parents, it can be a mindset shift too. That it's okay if some of these things are a little bit needs more tweaking than others, and there is hope and help for that. And so I was hoping maybe just to kind of, as we're wrapping up, is that you give people love stories, and you give us a story of a teenager that you've worked with that had maybe a lot of these things that they were struggling with, and the parents were aware of, that has been just able to overcome.
Yeah, well, before I do that, let me mention that those were a lot of things. And how do you work on those things? Well, there are a lot of ways, but the assessment that I gave you guys, that assessment will give you, even though I didn't even use those words in the assessment, it will give you very concrete places to start. Because I know that in your mind, you're probably thinking, well, how, Seth, do we do all those things? That sounds overwhelming. Right. That's where you start, is with that assessment. Those are the things that are in a concrete way with different verbiage to help you know, okay, now we really get things that we can work on.
Right.
And I do want to mention, start with 1 or 2, don't start with everything. But that's on the assessment too. So you don't need to remember that detail. Okay. So I'm going to give you 2 stories, maybe 3. But one story is about a kiddo that I worked with who was a college student. She was failing out of college. Most of the college students that I work with are sophomores or second year and not sophomores, because their freshman year, everything fell apart because they were not ready for college. They did not have these skills to navigate the demands. So one of them, I started working with her, and I worked with her for about 4 years. And when I first started working with her, she was resistant, but had an open mind. But she had all kinds of excuses that she had worked on for years that kept her out of execution. In other words, her excuses, her resistance empowered her to not take action on her long-term goals so that she could pursue her short-term goals of Netflix or smoking pot or partying or whatever those things were, right? So her decision making and her prioritization and all the spokes that we were talking about, she was just stuck, but she was willing, and that's a key for these kids. And sometimes parents can't give kids that. Sometimes they have to go through a lot of struggle before the kid is willing. And sometimes things that parents or teachers do make things even more complicated for the kids, where they're even more resistant because they're just feeling like, I'm trying so hard and nobody sees. Anyhow, so for this student, who I'm still in touch with the family, and they're out in Los Angeles, and she is 32 now. And she is she's happy in life, and she had her bumps, and we talk every month or two, and
Oh, I love that.
um but it took a lot for her to and let me tell you, parents, like as a college student, um her what she used to do, she used to have dishes in the sink that were just caked with mold, and just everything was, and every pot and every pan was disgusting. Nothing was cleaned. There was moldy stuff in the refrigerator. There was stuff all over the floor. She didn't know what was up with her folders or her classes, or she didn't get textbooks at the beginning of the semester, if at all during the semester. She just really was so stuck. She did not even know where to start. But she is a successful, happy young woman today who has good relationships with her family, because the relationships were very strained at the time as well. The next one I want to talk about is a young woman who I started working with her when she was in 6th grade. And I only worked with her for a semester or two at the time. I was really working more with her older sister. And with her, there was just, she had decent executive function already. She just needed a little bit of structure. So anyhow, work with her in 6th grade. She gets, things are going pretty well. And then the family comes back to me when she's a sophomore in high school, and things started to disintegrate again. And she was someone who was willing, which a lot of the students are very resistant at first, but she's one of those students that you probably get sometimes where they're like, yeah, I definitely want things to be easier for me. So you and I get students who are completely like, look, I don't want to talk to this stupid Seth guy. Who the heck is that? Just some other person that's going to make me feel bad about myself. I don't want to
do this.
Yeah, leave me alone, parents. I've got this. Get off my back. Why don't you trust me? I can handle this. I promise. It's the teacher's fault, whatever. And then we get kids that are like, yeah, I'm struggling. I don't want this stuff to be a struggle. But they're both struggling with the same stuff, but the level of resistance is different. So this kiddo, she already knew me, and she's like, I want my life to be easier. So started working with her again her sophomore and junior year, then not her senior year, because her senior year, she really had it, and then she just graduated, which is super cool. And but she was somebody who didn't need as intensive as help. She needed more fine-tuning. Right? She had some semblance of how to execute, how to manage time, how to use her calendars, how to advocate. She just needed some fine-tuning in those things to really cross that line with the point B, where she was really like, okay, I've got this. And then the third one that I want to tell you about, as far as a success story, is not going to sound like a success story. This is a kid I've known since he was in 7th grade, I think is when I started working with him. This is the kiddo. He's not very verbal, doesn't talk a lot, very introverted, very quiet, very, very intelligent, and very, very, very not good at traditional school.
Wow. Yeah.
So his intelligence was overshadowed by his not being highly verbal. So he appeared as if he wasn't trying. Processing issues, attentional issues, a lot of shame in middle school, continued into high school with teachers who didn't get him, didn't understand him. And he is somebody who really just right now he's trying to figure out, does he want to get his GED, and does he just want to quit school? And he's going into junior year, so he's finished 2 years. So I've known the family a long time. I'm very close to the family. He has started, he's made a lot of bad decisions, has started experimenting with drugs, has gotten in a lot of trouble in different ways, hates school, hates teachers, hates the system, talks about Alan Watts, which is actually really deep, cool stuff, but he's like really deep, but he's really struggling right now. And that may sound like an unsuccess story, but here's the thing. Everybody's starting from a different place. And if this kiddo did not have the support that we gave him, that his parents give him, the way the parents work on themselves, their relationship, their old baggage, they're getting their own couples counseling, all this stuff. And they've always tried to be really empathetic and compassionate with him, and so still setting boundaries, but also listening. and not just resorting to punishments and trying to reward or trying to nag or trying to lecture or all these things. They've really worked on themselves. And this kid, he really is so outside the box. He's not built for traditional school.
Right.
And the thing about it that is successful, first of all, is that year after year, as I've worked with him, he has learned way better planning, organization, advocacy, self-respect, even how to listen to himself, how to work with his emotions and his body, and not just listen to his story and narrative, and just how to have some mindfulness, make better decisions. But here's the most important thing as far as I'm concerned. He will tell me everything, and he will tell his parents 80 or 90% of everything. A lot of kids in his situation that haven't had this kind of support will lie, and push their parents away. And of course he does that, but he also comes back. So like an adolescent does, he pushes them away, but then he also reopens up. He gets honest with them. So the fact that their relationship is pretty good is, to me, everything. Because a lot of kids in his situation, they would completely shut down, and really go downhill to even worse levels and have no support system or way of accessing support once they need it. Now, I said something, I brushed by a concept, Renee, at the beginning of this. So parents, I mentioned getting help from their parents, and I mentioned receiving help. So you have to ask for help, but you also have to know how to receive it. This kid knows how to receive it. So he's not ready for all the help. He's struggling. But I consider this very much a success story because he can access support, and he's grown so much. And for a lot of you listening out there, you might be like, what do you mean he's grown so much? Let me tell you, he has learned so much about himself and about his own executive function, and how it's just tremendous. So you really have to understand how to value the growth that somebody makes, because I always say it's growth in millimeters, and all the speakers on my summit say the same thing. Like, this is baby steps.
Baby steps.
And and it can be so clear to parents, well, they just need to do this and everything would be so much easier. Their life would be so much easier if they just blank. It's not. That's not the reality of the situation. Sorry. So, and the thing about baby steps is that sometimes there's a giant step, or sometimes a threshold corner is turned that is massive. So, but it's all the baby steps before that lead to that point. So those are 3 quick success stories I wanted to tell you about that I think are very different, but we're always still trying to get from the A to the B, where we turn the corner. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. The one kid, it's not good enough yet. The third one I mentioned, we haven't turned that corner where everybody's like, okay, he's going to be okay. We're not there yet, but we're getting there, and the door's open. That's the important thing I want to leave you with, parents, is you got to keep that door open. The relationship is the most important thing. We've got a lot of baggage, parents. And you know, for those of you dads that are watching, I'm so glad that you're here, because not a lot of dads show up to this stuff. And that your kids need you so bad, and they need you to be someone who sets the example and does the modeling of, hey, it's good to be vulnerable. It's good to work on myself. I'm human. And they need to see that so bad, because when it comes time for them, when they really have a problem, we want them to have seen the modeling from both parents, ideally, if it's a 2-parent family, where, hey, takes courage. It's cool to work on yourself. It's cool to take responsibility, and be a grown-up, you know.
And the beauty of coaching, what we do, that we're really blessed to do, is that we provide that safe space for the teenagers, and we meet them right where they're at. And you're right, they do tell you everything. We know we get a lot of information, which, of course, information is power. And so they need that safe space, be it from a coach or someone else. And we see, I don't know if this occurs with you, I'm sure, but I see those baby steps. Whereas, because they're not sharing the content of the coaching session or all those little things they're learning how to do, They may be invisible things. A lot of times the parents don't see them. And I think that you were saying, like, sometimes parents are like, well, I need to do this. And we're saying, well, they've actually taken 5 steps towards that since I just started working with them a month ago or 2 months ago or whatever. Have you noticed that as well?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, what we in our culture have been sort of indoctrinated to see are the things that are tangible. So that might be grades, test scores, messy bedroom. You know, these are things that are tangible, but it's a lot of the intangibles, you know, seriously, like, you know, like if a kid, you and I were working with a kid for a couple months, and then one day they say, hey, Seth, can I ask you something? Yeah. Can you help me with blah, blah, blah? And they've never asked for help openly before. Like, that's giant. That might be giant, but that's intangible.
Yeah.
Somebody might be like, oh, and not notice that. So it's so important, parents, to notice the effort.
So as you can tell, parents, Seth is just a massive library of information and support. And we're so happy to have had you here today. And I know I've taken copious notes, and I can't wait to watch it again, like I said, and take notes. And parents, Seth has graciously given you a free gift, and that free gift is the assessment. And so I'll have a link below of how to take the assessment to see if executive function is really what's happening with your son or daughter. And then also you'll know how to get in contact with Seth and the different programs that he offers. And he has, again, a huge library of blogs and videos and all kinds of things with really just packed full of content, just like we have today. And Seth, if you'll just leave us with the parents, it's important to take action. And so in the next 24 to 48 hours, what do you want to tell the parents who've watched today? What do you want to tell them to do to move forward?
Yeah, I think one thing would be to go ahead and print the assessment and look at it and do it, and then see if you can get buy-in for your child to do it on their own. And then I think that I would say 2 more things. One would be to work on listening a lot more. So listen 90%, talk 10%. So we're so reactive, and bite your tongue and really, instead of really interrupt your own patterning, and instead of ping-ponging into your patterned or habituated conversations that you have with your kid, try to really bite your tongue and start saying things like, interesting, tell me more. I'm listening. Tell me more. And really wait and leave a lot of long, awkward pauses. Tell me more. I really want to understand. And don't try to change their way of thinking. That's not the goal of that conversation. The goal of that conversation is for them to walk away feeling heard. So my challenge to you would be, in taking action, is when you have conversations with your kid in the next 24, 40 hours or the next year, your goal is not to convince them of your way of thinking or to tell them what's wrong with their way of thinking, but it's for them to walk away feeling heard. Feeling heard. You're going to get more buy-in, more connection, better relationship with helping them feel heard. So that's the one thing I'd say. Then the last thing that I would say is the 3-to-1 rule, or the pebbles of positivity. So in the next 24 to 48 hours, I want you to really, 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 as much as humanly possible, and obviously there are times when it's a safety issue or an urgency issue and you have to get to an appointment or whatever, or they have to get to their class or whatever. Aside from those things, try to not try. So the 3-to-1 rule says we focus on 3 positives to every 1 perceived negative. So try to really focus on the positives, but do even more than 3-to-1. Do the pebbles of positivity, and that they have to be genuine, and you just throw them out and you don't wait for a response. So like I might say, Renee, I noticed that you're really looking at me in the camera right now and you're really attentive right now. That's super cool. And then I just go do my thing. Now she might say thank you or want to engage, but I'm not waiting for that. I'm just tossing it out. Renee, I noticed you put that inspire thing when we first started today. I saw that inspire thing and I thought it was cool. I like that. You're a positive person. Boom. It's just a little pebble that I'm throwing out. You know, Renee, I noticed that you match your scarf with your green thing. That looks really cool. Matches your eyes. Awesome. That's, see, look, did you see your body language? Now I might also notice the body language. I notice you lean forward. These that seem to be, and then I can wait for her to reflect back to me, you know, yeah, that was really nice. I like it when you say things like that, Seth, that I feel seen or whatever. But doesn't matter. I want you to just throw those pebbles, but they have to be genuine, but all the time. Because what we do instead is we say, oh, you got an 89, why didn't you get a 90? Oh, you cleaned your room, why are those socks still on the floor? You know, and so they feel so invalidated. But I want you to notice their strengths, their passions, their interests, the things they're doing. You know, hey, that was really cool what you just did with your sister. That was nice of you. Like, just notice everything and start doing that. So I want you to practice the 3-to-1 rule in the pebbles of positivity, and essentially seeing them, seeing what's good, really validating those things. I hate to use the word good, but for lack of a better word in this moment,
right.
Seeing those, noticing all the good, they need to be seen for that. And then my second one, my brain is fried right now. I don't even remember what my second one was. There's pebbles positivity and 3-to-1. The active listening,
intentionally, and really waiting and coming from a place of curiosity instead of judgment.
And the assessment.
Yeah, and the assessment. So I will tell you that you have been seen and heard in a powerful way today, and I am personally so grateful that you do what you do. And again, I want to encourage parents to read Seth's story. It's very powerful, and it will give you an understanding of who you've seen that he is today. And this is the real deal. And so again, you'll know how to contact him. You'll know how to assess, to get the assessment. And thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. And I want to say, I'm going to totally steal what Debbie Reber says, but you are the perfect parent for your child. The fact that you're here, like, you're doing the right things, just it's a long journey. Your kid needs you, and what you do matters. And just thank you for being a parent. And to all you parents watching, just keep taking another baby step forward. You've got this. It matters. What you're doing is working. It just takes time. Just just don't stop. You've got this.
Right. Thank you so much.